This clause is a trap. The poor girl warned and the millionaire CEO's world stopped spinning. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. In a chic, bustling restaurant filled with the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware, a young woman named Emma sat nervously at a table. The warm lighting reflected off the polished surfaces, and every dish seemed like a work of art. She didn't belong here, not in a place this luxurious, wearing a second-hand dress and scuffed shoes. Her hands fidgeted with the napkin in her lap, a nervous habit that she couldn't shake. She had promised her best friend, Jenny, that she'd go through with this blind date, but Emma wasn't sure she could keep it together. "Table 7, she mumbled to herself, her heart pounding in her chest. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on a man sitting alone at a table near the back. He was impeccably dressed, his dark hair neatly styled, and he looked completely absorbed in his phone. That's gotta be him, she thought, trying to calm her nerves. She stood up, adjusting her second-hand dress, and took a deep breath before walking over to the table. "Hi, you must be Kevin. I'm Emma. Nice to meet you." The man looked up, startled. He blinked at her, clearly confused, but Emma, misreading his hesitation as shyness, took a seat across from him. "I know this is awkward," she said, trying to fill the silence. "Blind dates are always weird, right? Jenny told me you might be a little quiet, so don't worry, I can talk enough for both of us." The man opened his mouth to correct her, but paused. His business associate had just texted him, canceling their meeting, and something about Emma's earnest smile made him hesitate. She wasn't like the polished, perfect women he usually interacted with. There was an authenticity about her, a genuine warmth he hadn't expected. He smiled faintly and leaned back in his chair. "Right. Blind dates are something else," he replied, his voice low and amused. Emma laughed nervously and took a sip of water, trying to hide her discomfort. "Tell me about yourself. I'm a waitress," she continued. "Not exactly glamorous, but it pays the bills." "Waitress, huh?" he asked, intrigued. "And you?" "I work in tech," he replied vaguely, clearly not wanting to reveal too much. Emma's eyes lit up. "Tech? Like coding and apps and all that? I'm terrible with computers," she laughed. He smiled, his curiosity piqued by her charm. The conversation flowed surprisingly well, despite the awkwardness. Emma shared stories about her struggles with rent and her dream of one day opening her own art studio. He found himself laughing more than he had in months, her enthusiasm infectious. As they continued to talk, Emma began to feel a little more at ease, but she still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. After all, she had come here under the assumption that this was Kevin, the man she had been set up with. But then her phone buzzed. "Hey, Emma, where are you? I'm at table 7. Looking forward to meeting you, Kevin." Her stomach dropped as she reread the message. "Oh my God," she muttered, looking up at the man across from her. "You're not Kevin, are you?" The man's smile faltered, and for a moment, guilt flashed in his eyes. "No," he admitted softly. Emma's face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, standing up to leave. "I sat at the wrong table. This is so embarrassing." But as she reached for her coat, the man stood up too. "Wait," he said gently, his voice kind. "It's okay." But Emma was already out the door, her heart racing with mortification. She hurried through the restaurant, her face burning as she made her way to the exit. As she stepped out into the cool night air, she couldn't help but wonder, what had just happened? Was this some kind of sign? The next morning, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of embarrassment. She had been so sure that the man she spoke to at the restaurant was Kevin, the guy she had been set up with. But it wasn't him. Her mind kept replaying the awkward encounter, and she couldn't stop cringing. She had never been good at blind dates, and this one had started off all wrong. She sighed as she wiped down the counter at the diner where she worked. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and right now that was all she could focus on. She needed to make rent, keep her head down, and get through the day. But in the back of her mind, she couldn't help but think about the man from last night. There was something about him. The way he had smiled at her, the kindness in his eyes. He wasn't like the other guys she usually met, but she couldn't afford to dwell on that. She had her own problems to deal with. Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at it and saw a text message from Jenny. "Emma, you won't believe this. Kevin's friend Liam Parker just texted me. He wants to meet you again. He's the one you sat next to last night, right?" Her heart skipped a beat as she read the message. Was this some kind of joke? Kevin's friend? She quickly typed back, "Are you serious? I thought I sat at the wrong table." Jenny's reply came almost instantly. "Yep, turns out he was the one you were meant to meet. He wants to apologize and asked me to tell you he'd love to see you again. Coffee, maybe?" Emma stared at the screen, her mind racing. Could this be real? The man from last night, the one she had thought was just another awkward date, actually wanted to see her again. It didn't make sense, but something told her she should go. Maybe it was her curiosity, or maybe it was something more. She needed to know who he really was, what he was really like. After a moment of hesitation, she typed her response. "Okay, coffee sounds nice. When?" The reply was quick. "I'll pick you up at noon." Emma couldn't believe what was happening. She hadn't expected this, but part of her was excited. She didn't know if she was ready for another blind date, especially with someone she'd already made a fool of herself in front of. But she couldn't ignore the feeling that this was something different. At noon, as promised, a black luxury car pulled up in front of her apartment. She stepped outside, her heart fluttering. She hadn't seen him since last night, but somehow, he looked even more handsome in the daylight. Liam Parker, the man she thought was just a regular guy, was now someone she was about to get to know. She hesitated for a moment before opening the car door and sliding in. "Hi, Emma," he said, his smile warm but cautious. "Thanks for agreeing to meet again." "Yeah, I'm still kind of shocked," Emma replied, her voice a little nervous. "I really didn't expect you to want to see me again after, last night." Liam chuckled, his eyes softening. "I understand. I probably should have corrected you sooner, but something about your honesty made me want to spend more time with you. You're different, Emma." She felt her cheeks flush, unsure how to respond. "So, what exactly do you do, Liam?" she asked, trying to steer the conversation back to something safer. "I'm in tech," he said, the same vague answer from last night. "I run a few companies, but I try to stay out of the spotlight. I don't like talking about it much. I prefer just being." Liam. His words made her wonder even more. Who was this guy? Why was he so humble? Most men in his position would flaunt their wealth and status, but Liam didn't seem interested in doing that. It intrigued her. As they arrived at a small cafe, Liam opened the door for her and led her inside. The place was cozy, with a warm ambiance that made Emma feel more at ease than she had all morning. They ordered their drinks, and the conversation flowed easily. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt like she could truly relax. As they talked, she learned more about his childhood, his family, and his love for technology. But still, something didn't add up. Why hadn't he just told her who he was last night? Why had he let her believe he was someone else? "Liam," she finally asked, her curiosity getting the better of her, "why didn't you tell me who you were? Last night I thought you were just some random guy, and I made a complete fool of myself." Liam looked down, his expression unreadable for a moment. "I wanted to see if you would treat me like a normal person," he said quietly. "Most people only see me for my money or my position. I wanted to know if you'd care about me for who I really am." Emma's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't like the others. He genuinely cared about more than just his wealth. She didn't know what to say. The truth of his words hung in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. As the coffee grew cold, they sat there in a comfortable silence, both realizing that this meeting, however strange and unexpected, was the beginning of something they hadn't anticipated. As the days passed, Emma found herself thinking about Liam more than she had expected. Every time she walked past the small cafe where they had shared coffee, she would glance inside, half hoping to see him sitting at his usual table. She couldn't deny that she felt drawn to him, but the nagging doubt in the back of her mind kept her from fully embracing her feelings. Liam had been so kind, so genuine, but why hadn't he been upfront with her about who he really was? Was it all part of some game? She wasn't sure, but there was something about him that made her believe he wasn't like the others she had met before. One evening, a week after their coffee date, she received a message from Liam. "I'm having an event for a new project tomorrow night. Would you like to join me? It's a charity gala, and I think it's something you'd enjoy." Emma hesitated as she read the message. A charity gala? He hadn't mentioned anything about being involved in such events when they had met. Was this another part of his life that he had kept hidden from her? She wasn't sure what to think, but the idea of attending such a prestigious event intrigued her. She thought about the way he had made her feel so comfortable during their first meeting, how he had listened to her stories about her struggles, and how she had never felt judged. Maybe this could be her chance to see him in a different light, to learn more about the man behind the mysterious CEO persona. She quickly typed a reply. "I'd love to attend. Thank you for the invite." The next evening, Emma stood in front of her mirror, staring at the dress she had borrowed from Jenny. It wasn't the fanciest gown, but it was the best she could do with the limited money she had. She took a deep breath and smoothed down the fabric, trying to calm her nerves. She wasn't used to fancy events like this, but she had promised herself she would not let her insecurities get the best of her. Liam had asked her to come, and she would not let her doubts hold her back. The car arrived on time, and Emma stepped inside, her heart racing. When they arrived at the venue, the sight of the elegant ballroom took her breath away. The sparkling chandeliers, the white-gloved waiters, the sea of well-dressed guests, everything was beyond what she had imagined. Liam was already there, standing by the entrance, his tall figure easily recognizable in a well-tailored suit. As soon as he saw her, his face broke into a warm smile, and he walked toward her, his hand extended. "Emma, you made it," he said, his voice low and welcoming. "You look amazing." Emma felt her cheeks flush under his gaze. "Thank you," she replied softly, feeling out of place among the high society crowd. She was just a waitress, after all. Liam led her through the event, introducing her to several guests, most of whom were industry leaders, business owners, and philanthropists. Emma tried her best to smile and engage in conversations, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. Every now and then, she would catch Liam's eyes from across the room, and he would give her a reassuring nod, as if telling her that she was fine. Eventually, the evening shifted as the charity auction began. Liam took the stage to introduce the event, his confident voice filling the room as he spoke about the importance of giving back. Emma listened intently, admiring his ability to command attention and speak so passionately about his causes. He was so different from the man she had met at the cafe, the quiet, humble person who had sat across from her with a shy smile. As the auction went on, Liam's words began to sink in, and Emma started to feel a deeper connection to him. She had always admired people who used their success for good, and Liam was clearly one of those people. He wasn't just the CEO of a successful tech company. He was someone who cared about making a difference in the world. At that moment, Emma realized that she had been too quick to judge him. He wasn't hiding behind a mask of wealth or status, he was simply trying to protect the parts of himself that mattered most. After the event, as the guests began to leave, Liam took Emma aside. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said, his tone more personal than it had been all evening. "I hope it wasn't too overwhelming." Emma smiled, feeling a sense of warmth wash over her. "It was definitely overwhelming, but I'm glad I came too." Liam chuckled softly. "I know it's not your usual scene, but I wanted to show you the side of my life that matters to me." "I'm glad you did," Emma replied, her voice sincere. There was something in his eyes that made her believe in him, in his sincerity, and in the possibility of something real between them. "Thank you for inviting me." "Of course," Liam said, his voice softening. "I'd like to see you again, Emma, if you're open to it." Emma's heart skipped a beat. This time there was no hesitation. "I'd like that too." As the days passed, Emma felt a shift in her thoughts and emotions. The coffee date had left her curious, but the charity gala had left her with a sense of wonder. Liam was different from the men she had known. He was kind, humble, and had a heart that clearly cared for more than just business. Emma's life had always been about surviving, getting through the next day, making enough money to pay the bills. But Liam had opened her eyes to a world where success wasn't just about the money. It was about making an impact, helping others, and finding real connections. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Liam continued to spend time together. They would meet for lunch, or sometimes just talk on the phone in the evenings. Each time, Emma felt a little more at ease, a little more sure of herself. Liam had this way of making her feel like she mattered, like her dreams were valid, and that the life she imagined for herself wasn't out of reach. He invited her to more events gatherings that brought together people who were trying to make a difference in their communities. At first, Emma had been hesitant. She wasn't used to that world. But with Liam by her side, she felt more confident, more capable. They started working together on a few of his philanthropic projects, and Emma found herself growing closer to him. It wasn't just the charity work that drew her in, though. It was the way Liam treated her like she was his equal, not some charity case, and he genuinely seemed interested in her life, her passions, and her thoughts. One evening, they were having dinner at a small Italian restaurant. The air outside was crisp, and the warmth from the restaurant's cozy atmosphere made Emma feel safe. They were sitting by the window, the city lights flickering in the distance. Liam reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he said, his voice serious. "I'm really glad we met, Emma. You've shown me a side of life I didn't know I was missing." Emma looked up at him, her heart skipping a beat. "I feel the same way," she replied softly. "I didn't expect any of this, but I'm really glad it's happening." He smiled at her, his eyes full of warmth. "I know we started this whole thing with a misunderstanding. I wasn't totally upfront with you, and for that I'm sorry. But I want you to know that I'm not trying to play games. I care about you, Emma, more than I thought I would." Emma's breath caught in her chest. She had always been cautious about letting her guard down. But with Liam, it felt different. He wasn't just the CEO of a successful tech company, he was someone who made her feel like she was the most important person in the room. "Liam," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I didn't expect this either, but I'm glad I gave you a chance. I'm glad we're doing this." He squeezed her hand, a gesture so simple, yet so meaningful. "I'm glad too," he said quietly. There was a long pause as they both sat there, taking in the moment. Emma had always been a bit of a skeptic when it came to love. She had been burned before, and she wasn't sure if she could ever fully trust anyone again. But with Liam, it felt like she could finally let go of the fear that had held her back for so long. After dinner, they walked through the city together, the cool night air brushing against their faces as they talked about everything and nothing. They stopped at a park, where Liam led her to a bench beneath a tree. They sat there, the sound of the city fading into the background, just enjoying the peace. Liam turned to her, his expression soft. "I want you to know something," he said, his voice low. "I've never felt this way about anyone before. I care about you, Emma, a lot." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest as she looked at him. She had never been the type to fall quickly, but with Liam everything felt right. "I care about you too," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Liam smiled, his hand reaching out to gently brush her cheek. "I'm glad we're on the same page." As the night wore on, they walked back to the car, the city lights reflecting in the windows. Emma couldn't help but smile. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. She had spent so much of her life trying to survive, trying to make ends meet, but now, with Liam by her side, she felt like she was finally living. And for the first time in a long time, Emma knew that she wasn't alone. She had found someone who truly cared about her, someone who saw her for who she was, not just what she did for a living. As they drove through the city, Emma leaned back in her seat, her hand still resting in Liam's. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that for the first time in a long time, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Weeks passed, and Emma and Liam's relationship continued to grow. The more time they spent together, the stronger their bond became. They started to open up to each other in ways they never had before, sharing their fears, hopes, and dreams. Emma felt herself changing, slowly but surely. She wasn't just the girl who worked at the diner anymore. She was someone who mattered to someone else, someone who believed in her potential. Liam's world, a world so different from hers, seemed less intimidating now. He showed her how much more there was to life than just surviving. He made her believe that her dreams could become a reality, that she could actually open the art studio she had always dreamed of. One evening, as they sat in Liam's penthouse, overlooking the glittering lights of the city, Liam turned to her, his expression serious but soft. "Emma," he said quietly, "I know we started off in a strange way, with the whole contract and misunderstanding. But I want you to know I'm not just doing this for the sake of the agreement anymore. I care about you more than I thought I could." Emma looked at him, her heart racing. She had always been careful with her emotions, afraid to trust too easily. But with Liam, it felt different. She had never imagined that a man like him could feel the same way. "I care about you too, Liam," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, and for a moment, it seemed like the world around them had stopped. Liam's eyes softened, and he reached for her hand. "I don't want this to just be about a contract," he said, his voice low and steady. "I want it to be real. I want us to be real." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had never thought she'd hear those words from him, especially after everything that had happened. But in that moment, she realized just how much she had come to care for him. Are you sure about that? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Because I don't want to be a part of something that's not real. Liam nodded, his grip on her hand tightening slightly. I'm sure, he said firmly. I don't want to hide behind a contract anymore. I want to be with you, not because of some deal, but because I genuinely care about you. The sincerity in his voice took her breath away. For the first time, she felt like she was truly seen, not as a waitress, not as someone living paycheck to paycheck, but as Emma, the person who had captured Liam's heart. She smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I want that too, she said softly. I've been scared, Liam. I've been scared that I'd get hurt, that this was all too good to be true. But I trust you, and I'm ready to take that step. Liam's eyes sparkled with relief and joy. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You don't know how much that means to me. They sat there for a moment, simply holding hands, letting the words hang in the air between them. Everything had changed, but somehow, it felt like everything was finally falling into place. As the days went on, their relationship blossomed into something deeper. Liam continued to support Emma in every way he could, encouraging her to pursue her art and even helping her set up her first gallery show. She couldn't believe how far she had come, how much had changed in just a few short months. Emma had never imagined that a simple misunderstanding at a restaurant would lead to this her own art show, a relationship with a man she truly cared about, and a future that was full of possibilities. One evening, as she was preparing for the gallery show, Liam surprised her with a gift. He handed her a small box wrapped in silver paper. I know you've been working so hard for this, he said softly, and I wanted to give you something special. Emma opened the box to find a beautiful pendant, a small, delicate silver key. It wasn't expensive, but it was perfect. It's a symbol, Liam explained. A key to your future. A key to everything you've dreamed of. Emma felt tears well up in her eyes as she looked at him. Thank you, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. This means more to me than you know. Liam smiled, his eyes full of tenderness. You deserve it, Emma. You deserve everything you've worked for. As the night of the gallery show arrived, Emma felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She had poured her heart and soul into every piece on the walls, and now it was time for the world to see them. Liam was by her side, as always, offering her his support and encouragement. The show was a success, more than she could have hoped for. People admired her work, complimented her talent, and for the first time in her life, Emma felt truly seen for who she was. As the night came to a close, Liam pulled her aside. I'm so proud of you, he said, his voice full of admiration. This is just the beginning, Emma. You're going to do amazing things. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. I couldn't have done it without you, she replied, her voice soft but sincere. Liam's smile widened, and he leaned in to kiss her, gently and with all the tenderness he had shown her from the beginning. As their lips met, Emma knew that this was only the start of their story. There was no contract between them anymore. No misunderstandings, just two people who had found each other in a world full of possibilities, ready to take on whatever came next, together. As the weeks passed, Emma and Liam settled into a comfortable rhythm. Their relationship had transformed into something real and genuine, and Emma couldn't believe how much her life had changed. The girl who once struggled to make rent was now part of a world she had never imagined, one full of art, love, and support. Liam had encouraged her to continue pursuing her art, and now her work was being recognized. She had started to see her dreams come true in ways she hadn't thought possible. But as happy as she was, there was always this nagging fear in the back of her mind. What if it was all too good to be true? What if the man she loved was hiding something? One evening, as they sat in Liam's apartment, enjoying a quiet dinner together, Emma's mind wandered. She had been keeping herself busy with her art and the gallery show, but there were still some unanswered questions. She knew that Liam was the CEO of a tech company, but he had never talked much about the personal side of his life. There was still so much about him that she didn't know, and part of her was afraid to ask. She looked across the table at him, watching as he cut into his steak, his face calm and focused. He was so composed, so confident, and it made her feel like there was still a part of him that she couldn't reach. Liam, she said, her voice quiet, I've been thinking about us. He looked up at her, his expression softening. What's on your mind? Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure how to put her thoughts into words. I don't know everything about you. I mean, I know you're successful, but I don't know much about your past or your family. I want to know more. I want to understand you better. Liam set his fork down and leaned back in his chair, his gaze thoughtful. I understand, he said after a moment. I've been keeping some things from you, but not because I don't trust you. I just wanted to make sure we were building something real first, before I shared everything with you. Emma nodded, her heart pounding. What do you mean by that? Liam sighed, a hint of sadness in his eyes. I come from a family that's complicated. My parents are still involved in the business, and they've never been exactly supportive of my decisions. I've kept my distance from them for a long time, but I know that one day I'll have to face them. It's just not something I want to bring up right now. Emma's heart ached as she listened to him. She could hear the pain in his voice, and she could only imagine how difficult it must have been for him to distance himself from his family. Liam, she said softly, you don't have to do this alone. You've shown me nothing but kindness and support, and I want to be there for you too. I'm not going anywhere. He looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. I don't deserve you, he said quietly, but I'm so glad I found you. Emma smiled, feeling a sense of warmth fill her chest. She had never felt so close to someone before, and she knew that no matter what the future held, she and Liam could face it together. The following week, Liam invited her to a family gathering. He had mentioned his family before, but this would be the first time Emma would meet them. She was nervous, unsure of what to expect. Would they like her? Would they accept her into their world? On the day of the gathering, Emma put on her nicest dress, trying to calm her nerves. Liam assured her that everything would be fine, but she couldn't help but feel out of place. As they arrived at his family's estate, Emma was taken aback by the grandeur of the place. The house was massive, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens and a long driveway that seemed to go on forever. It was a world so far removed from her own, and she felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. Liam reached over and squeezed her hand. Don't worry, he said softly. They're not as intimidating as they seem. Emma smiled nervously as they stepped out of the car and made their way to the front door. Liam's family greeted them warmly, but Emma could tell that there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. His mother, a poised and elegant woman, gave her a quick but polite smile, while his father, tall, stern, and authoritative, gave her a brief nod. The evening went by in a blur of small talk and formalities, and Emma couldn't help but feel like an outsider. She tried her best to fit in, laughing at the right moments and nodding when appropriate, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. After dinner, Liam pulled her aside. How are you doing? He asked, his voice low and concerned. I know this isn't easy, but I want you to know that I'm proud of you for being here. Emma smiled, grateful for his support. It's not easy, she admitted, but I'm trying. I don't feel like I fit in here. Liam squeezed her hand. You do fit in, Emma. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. As they left the gathering later that evening, Emma felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. She had made it through, but she wasn't sure if she had made a real connection with Liam's family. She glanced over at him, his expression unreadable. Liam, she began softly, do you think they like me? He paused for a moment, then smiled. They're still getting used to the idea of me being with someone who doesn't come from our world, but they'll come around. They have to. I'm not letting you go. Emma's heart skipped a beat at his words. She had been worried that she didn't belong in his world, but now, with him by her side, she realized that maybe it wasn't about fitting in, it was about the two of them making their own path together. As the weeks passed, Emma and Liam grew closer, and despite the rocky start, their bond became stronger than ever. Liam continued to support Emma as she built her art career, and she began to feel more confident in herself. But as much as Emma had grown in the relationship, there was always something in the back of her mind, a nagging feeling that she couldn't shake. Liam's world, his family, and the high-profile life he led were still foreign to her. She had come so far, but she still wasn't entirely sure how to fit into his world, or if she even could. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Liam's penthouse, the city lights twinkling in the distance, Emma felt the weight of her thoughts pressing on her chest. She had to bring it up. Liam, she began, her voice softer than usual, I've been thinking, I love what we have, I really do, but I don't know if I belong in your world. Liam turned to her, his expression serious but kind. What do you mean? He asked, his tone filled with concern. Emma sighed, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her glass. I don't come from the same place you do. Your family, your lifestyle, your business, it's all so different from what I know. I'm just afraid that one day you'll wake up and realize that I don't fit. That maybe I'm not the right person for you. Liam reached over, gently taking her hand in his, silencing her worries with a simple touch. "Emma," he said softly, "I don't want you to change. I don't want you to fit into my world. I want you to be yourself. That's the woman I fell for. The woman who made me believe in something more than business and success." Emma felt her heart race, his words settling deep within her. She had never heard him speak so earnestly, and for the first time, the doubt she had been carrying began to lift. "But what about your family?" she asked, her voice still uncertain. "What if they don't approve of me? What if they never accept me?" Liam smiled gently, his thumb brushing over her hand. "They will come around, Emma. They have to. I'm not going to let anyone tell me who I should be with. You and I, this is real. I want this, with you." Emma looked at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt, but all she saw was love and sincerity. In that moment, she knew that he meant every word. "I just don't want to lose you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Liam leaned in, his face inches from hers, his gaze intense. "You're not going to lose me. I'm not going anywhere." He kissed her softly, and for the first time in a long while, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could make it work. The next few weeks were filled with growth, both in their relationship and in Emma's personal journey. She began to find her confidence in Liam's world, learning to navigate the intricacies of high society events and dinners with ease. But more importantly, she never lost sight of who she was. She was still the same woman who worked hard to make her art a reality, who had dreams and aspirations, and who was learning to trust love again. One evening, as they attended a charity gala together, Liam turned to her with a serious expression. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," he said, his voice low. Emma felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. "What is it?" she asked, her heart racing. Liam took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers. "Emma, I want you to know how much you mean to me. I've never been this sure about anyone before. Will you marry me?" Emma's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She had never expected this moment to come, not so soon, and yet, somehow, it felt perfect. Her mind raced with emotions, excitement, fear, joy, but the one thing that stood out was certainty. She had never been more sure of anything in her life. "Yes," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Yes, I will marry you." Liam's face broke into a wide smile as he pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply, sealing their commitment to one another. In that moment, Emma knew that no matter what challenges they would face them together. She wasn't just the girl who had sat at the wrong table on a blind date anymore. She was the woman who had found love in the most unexpected place, with the man who saw her for who she truly was, and that was enough. As they stood there, surrounded by the glittering lights of the gala, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had finally found her place not in the world Liam had built, but in the love they shared. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she truly belonged. After their engagement, life seemed to settle into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comforting. Emma and Liam continued to build their future together, and the love they shared only deepened. Emma, once unsure of her place in his world, had finally found her footing. She was no longer just the waitress with big dreams. She was the woman who was going to marry a man who saw her for who she truly was. Still, despite the joy that came with their engagement, there were moments when Emma's insecurities crept back in. She couldn't help but wonder if Liam's family had fully accepted her, especially after their initial meeting. His parents were wealthy, established, and had a way of looking at her that sometimes made her feel like an outsider. She loved Liam, but she wasn't sure if his family would ever see her as more than just someone he was settling for. One evening, as they sat in Liam's penthouse, Emma couldn't hold her thoughts in anymore. "Liam," she began, her voice hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about your family. I know they've been polite, but do you think they truly accept me?" Liam put down his drink and turned to face her, his expression serious. "What do you mean?" he asked softly. Emma bit her lip, gathering her courage. "I just feel like I don't fit in with them. They're so different. I'm not from the same world as they are, and I'm worried that they're never going to really accept me." Liam reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Emma, you have nothing to prove to them. You are more than enough just as you are. My parents. They have their way of looking at the world, but they'll come around. They just need time to see how much you mean to me. And I'm not going anywhere. You're the one I'm marrying, not them." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her at his words, but the doubt still lingered. She had grown up in a modest world, where things weren't handed to her on a silver platter. She had worked hard to get to where she was, and sometimes it felt like Liam's family looked at her as though she were somehow inferior. She didn't want to let her insecurities ruin what they had, but it was hard not to feel like an outsider. A few days later, Liam suggested that they visit his family again. "I know it's been a bit tense," he said, "but I want you to know that I'm not asking you to do this for me. I want you to be comfortable." Emma hesitated, but in the end she agreed. She loved Liam, and if meeting his family was part of the journey, then she would face it head on. When they arrived at his parents' estate, Emma felt the familiar nerves return. The grandeur of the house, the perfectly manicured lawns, and the distant hum of high society conversations all felt like a stark contrast to her humble beginnings. She was just a small-town girl, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. As they entered the grand foyer, Liam's mother, a woman who carried herself with such elegance and poise, greeted them with a warm but reserved smile. His father, a tall man with a commanding presence, offered a quick handshake but didn't say much. Despite the polite pleasantries, Emma could feel the distance between her and them. The evening passed slowly, with the usual small talk about Liam's work and their upcoming wedding. Emma smiled and nodded, trying to fit in, but all the while her heart raced with the familiar feeling of being out of place. During dinner, Liam's mother leaned in, offering her a polite smile. "So, Emma," she said, her tone kind but probing, "what do you plan to do once you're married? Will you continue with your art, or are you planning to settle into a more traditional role?" Emma felt a lump rise in her throat, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had always been sensitive to people questioning her career choices. "I'll definitely continue with my art," she said, trying to sound confident. "It's what I've always wanted to do, and Liam has been incredibly supportive." Liam's mother gave a small nod, but Emma could tell that her words hadn't fully convinced her. The conversation drifted to other topics, but Emma's mind stayed focused on the question. She couldn't help but wonder if Liam's mother would ever truly accept her, or if she would always see her as someone who didn't quite fit in. As the night wore on, Emma began to feel exhausted. She had tried her best to be polite, to fit in, but the weight of her insecurities was starting to take its toll. She glanced over at Liam, who was talking with some of the other guests, and for a brief moment, she wished she could just escape the situation. But then, Liam caught her eye and smiled. In that instant, she realized something. She didn't need his family's approval to feel validated. What mattered was that she and Liam had built something real together, and no one could take that away from them. After dinner, they made their way to the garden, where Liam took her hand and led her outside. The cool night air felt refreshing, and for the first time that evening, Emma felt at ease. "Are you okay?" Liam asked, his voice soft with concern. Emma nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, I'm fine, just still getting used to everything." Liam smiled back, his hand squeezing hers. "You don't need to change for anyone. I love you exactly as you are." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had been so focused on fitting into his world, but in that moment, she realized that it wasn't about fitting in. It was about being true to herself and trusting in the love they shared. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." As they stood there in the garden, surrounded by the soft glow of the evening, Emma knew that no matter what obstacles they would face them together. With Liam by her side, she didn't need to prove anything to anyone else. She had found where she truly belonged right beside him. After their engagement, life seemed to settle into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comforting. Emma and Liam continued to build their future together, and the love they shared only deepened. Emma, once unsure of her place in his world, had finally found her footing. She was no longer just the waitress with big dreams. She was the woman who was going to marry a man who saw her for who she truly was. Still, despite the joy that came with their engagement, there were moments when Emma's insecurities crept back in. She couldn't help but wonder if Liam's family had fully accepted her, especially after their initial meeting. His parents were wealthy, established, and had a way of looking at her that sometimes made her feel like an outsider. She loved Liam, but she wasn't sure if his family would ever see her as more than just someone he was settling for. One evening, as they sat in Liam's penthouse, Emma couldn't hold her thoughts in anymore. "Liam," she began, her voice hesitant, "I've been thinking a lot about your family. I know they've been polite, but do you think they truly accept me?" Liam put down his drink and turned to face her, his expression serious. "What do you mean?" he asked softly. Emma bit her lip, gathering her courage. "I just feel like I don't fit in with them. They're so different. I'm not from the same world as they are, and I'm worried that they're never going to really accept me." Liam reached for her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Emma, you have nothing to prove to them. You are more than enough just as you are. My parents, they have their way of looking at the world, but they'll come around. They just need time to see how much you mean to me. And I'm not going anywhere. You're the one I'm marrying, not them." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her at his words, but the doubt still lingered. She had grown up in a modest world, where things weren't handed to her on a silver platter. She had worked hard to get to where she was, and sometimes it felt like Liam's family looked at her as though she were somehow inferior. She didn't want to let her insecurities ruin what they had, but it was hard not to feel like an outsider. A few days later, Liam suggested that they visit his family again. "I know it's been a bit tense," he said, "but I want you to know that I'm not asking you to do this for me. I want you to be comfortable." Emma hesitated, but in the end she agreed. She loved Liam, and if meeting his family was part of the journey, then she would face it head on. When they arrived at his parents' estate, Emma felt the familiar nerves return. The grandeur of the house, the perfectly manicured lawns, and the distant hum of high society conversations all felt like a stark contrast to her humble beginnings. She was just a small-town girl, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. As they entered the grand foyer, Liam's mother, a woman who carried herself with such elegance and poise, greeted them with a warm but reserved smile. His father, a tall man with a commanding presence, offered a quick handshake but didn't say much. Despite the polite pleasantries, Emma could feel the distance between her and them. The evening passed slowly, with the usual small talk about Liam's work and their upcoming wedding. Emma smiled and nodded, trying to fit in, but all the while her heart raced with the familiar feeling of being out of place. During dinner, Liam's mother leaned in, offering her a polite smile. "So Emma," she said, her tone kind but probing, "what do you plan to do once you're married? Will you continue with your art, or are you planning to settle into a more traditional role?" Emma felt a lump rise in her throat, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had always been sensitive to people questioning her career choices. "I'll definitely continue with my art," she said, trying to sound confident. "It's what I've always wanted to do, and Liam has been incredibly supportive." Liam's mother gave a small nod, but Emma could tell that her words hadn't fully convinced her. The conversation drifted to other topics, but Emma's mind stayed focused on the question. She couldn't help but wonder if Liam's mother would ever truly accept her, or if she would always see her as someone who didn't quite fit in. As the night wore on, Emma began to feel exhausted. She had tried her best to be polite, to fit in, but the weight of her insecurities was starting to take its toll. She glanced over at Liam, who was talking with some of the other guests, and for a brief moment, she wished she could just escape the situation. But then, Liam caught her eye and smiled. In that instant, she realized something. She didn't need his family's approval to feel validated. What mattered was that she and Liam had built something real together, and no one could take that away from them. After dinner, they made their way to the garden, where Liam took her hand and led her outside. The cool night air felt refreshing, and for the first time that evening, Emma felt at ease. "Are you okay?" Liam asked, his voice soft with concern. Emma nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, I'm fine, just still getting used to everything." Liam smiled back, his hand squeezing hers. "You don't need to change for anyone. I love you exactly as you are." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had been so focused on fitting into his world, but in that moment, she realized that it wasn't about fitting in. It was about being true to herself and trusting in the love they shared. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." As they stood there in the garden, surrounded by the soft glow of the evening, Emma knew that no matter what obstacles they would face them together. With Liam by her side, she didn't need to prove anything to anyone else. She had found where she truly belonged right beside him.